guys, what's up? How's summer? Summer's going great here. Really do feel like it's a summer of revival and renewal and hope, and what a great thing that is, right? Okay, so we have been talking about in these little videos, open my eyes to see the miracle wonders hidden in your word. So that's Psalm 119, verse 18. Open my eyes to see the miracle wonders hidden in your word. Love that. So there's so many things, endless things to talk about that we could ask God to open our eyes. And I encourage you, if you have a particular thing you're struggling with, a situation, something that you just don't necessarily have answers for, maybe you've tried to ask other people, maybe you've tried to search for answers yourself, but you're sort of stuck in something. Ask God. Ask Him. Open my eyes to see the miracle wonders hidden in your word. One version says, open my eyes to see the wonderful truths in your instructions. Sometimes we can read a verse and, maybe you think, oh, well, I've read that chapter of Proverbs, or I've read that Psalm, or I've read that part of the New Testament or whatever. But in different seasons of our lives, God speaks differently to us through the same word because it's living, it's active, it's alive. And our eyes can be open to it in a way when we're walking through an experience that it wouldn't necessarily have been because we weren't there yet. We weren't ready to see that particular truth or that particular wonder. So anyway, ask Him. So I was reading this passage of scripture from Matthew 7, and I'm going to read it to you from the Passion Translation. So it says this, and this is Jesus talking. He's telling a story. Everyone who hears my teaching and applies it to his life can be compared to a wise man who built his house on an unshakable foundation. When the rains fell and the flood came, with fierce winds beating upon his house, it stood firm because of its strong foundation. But everyone who hears my teaching and does not apply it to his life can be compared to a foolish man who built his house on sand. When it rained and rained and the flood came, with wind and waves beating upon his house, it collapsed and was swept away. So you've got like this compare and contrast situation, right? Jesus is saying, look, there's this is what happens to the one fella and this is what happens to the other fella. Now, I wish really, truly that it said, if storms come, if rains come, if floods come. That's not what it says. It says when they come, that when it rained and rained, when the flood came, when the wind and the waves beat upon the house, one of two things happened. So first of all, that tells me storms come to everybody. Jason mentioned this in his sermon Sunday, and he tries to mention it often because there's a lot of people who grow up and somehow, and who knows how, either we're just straight up taught this or we just somehow absorb it in some weird way. We're taught or learn to believe or take on a belief system that says when everything's great, God really loves me. But when things are hard, God doesn't love me. And that's just not true, guys. It's just not true. Listen, I got a one-word answer for people who talk to me about stuff like that and are trying to convince me of things like that. Paul in the New Testament. I think God was crazy for Paul. I think Paul was crazy for God. And yet there were some very difficult things. Most of the incredible, wonderful, amazing things that Paul wrote to us in the New Testament were written from a jail cell. So we can't base whether God loves us, whether God's pleased with us, whether God's enjoying us, whether we're having right relationship with God on our circumstances. That's not biblical. It may be cultural Christianity, but we're not culture people. We're kingdom people. So we have to go by the kingdom. And here Jesus is saying, he's telling us the story of these two people. And one is a wise person and one is a foolish person. And the wind and the storms come to both because life leaks. Like my husband says, I love that. Life leaks. Things happen. And I'm sorry they happen. I wish they didn't happen. I wish that everything was unicorns and rainbows and puppy dogs and don't you? Come on, that's human nature. But also we've lived long enough to know, if you're old enough to be watching this video, you're old enough to know, if you're old enough to work a smartphone, you're old enough to know that bad things happen. Bad things happen when you're killing it and doing amazing, and bad things happen when you're not doing so great. But here's the thing. One of these people, the wise one, heard Jesus's message. He says, everyone who hears the message and applies it, who hears Jesus's teaching and applies it. New King James Version says, and does it. If you look it up in the original, it's one of the meanings of it is perform. So you hear Jesus's teaching, and then you do it. And when you do that, he says, when the rains fall and the floods come and the fierce winds beat on your house, it will stand firm because of its strong foundation. Isn't that awesome? Won't stand firm because you're so fantastic, although I know you're fantastic. It won't stand firm because you know you completed all the things on your to-do list, or you read all the Bible that you were supposed to read this month, or you read, what, it isn't that. It's you heard Jesus's teachings, you got close enough to him to hear it. You spent time with him enough to hear it, and then you took him at his word and you did it. And it doesn't say that you did it perfectly. It doesn't say anything. It's just you heard and you did it. It's a showing of, I'm trying to follow you, Jesus. I'm seeking you because I'm listening to your instructions. And then I'm trying to live that out in my life. And when that happens, your foundation isn't based on you. That's how I know it's not about perfection. It's about relationship, getting close to Jesus, because you can't stop the wind and the floods and all that. You can't make your house stand firm. It stood firm because of its strong foundation. That strong foundation is Jesus Christ. That strong foundation is saying, I'm getting into your presence, Lord. I'm going to hear something from you today, and I'm going to try to do it. And I'm going to keep that at the forefront of my mind until it becomes a part of me. And then the person who didn't do that, he heard the teaching, but didn't apply it. So he heard it, and he was just like, meh. And when the same thing happened to the foolish one, their house collapsed and was swept away. I've been doing this long enough to know that there are some people who put their faith in things that seem Christian, like go to church, say I'm a Christian, pray over my food. Well, I don't know. There's probably so many things. But they're not in relationship with Jesus. They're not hearing him and trying to obey him and listening and doing and making his word active part of their life. Sometimes in my own life, I've even found that I've read the Bible to check the box to get my gold star, right? Well, I read it. Well, what did it mean? What are you walking it out? Well, I don't know, but I read it. No, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about hearing, listening, making it a part of your life, walking it out in your everyday life, like believing him, like taking him, like you said it, Jesus, I believe that, so I'm going to try to walk it out. And if you don't do that, then when hard times come, and I've seen it over and over again, then the foundation turns out was you. The foundation turns out was me, and it wasn't Jesus. And so, of course, the house fell down. Of course, the faith was swept away. Of course, we're just left grasping at straws and just vamping when we should be faithful and staying, and we retreat instead of standing, and it's swept away, and we're left wondering what happened. We didn't listen, and we didn't apply. We didn't really listen and apply what he said, because if we did, our house can stand firm because of the foundation of Jesus Christ. Okay, so what if you are like every other person listening to this, and that's happened to you, and your house was swept away, and your faith all of a sudden was shifting in the sand, and you just didn't know where to land? You start now. You start now building that firm foundation. Open my eyes to see the miracle wonders hidden in your word, Jesus. Open my eyes to see what you're saying, how I can obey it, how I can apply it, how I can make it part of my everyday life so I'm on a firm foundation. And that foundation is not me, because I've already learned enough about my own self to know that I stand on shifting sand sometimes. And the things that I build on my own self and my own strength can be swept away and can collapse because I in my own self am not strength. But when I put my firm foundation on Jesus Christ, then even when I'm weak, I'm strong. Even when the winds and the waves come, I can stand, and my house will stand. My house of faith, my house of hope, my house of love. My faith, my relationship with you, everything that I build my life around will stand because it's built on the firm foundation of Jesus Christ. Yeah. All right. I love you. I pray that you think about that this week and pray over it and say, God, open my eyes to see the miraculous wonders hidden in your word. And this word in particular from Matthew 7, God, how can I apply it? And how can I hear your teaching and obey it? Is there something you're wanting me to walk out of my life right now that you've taught? Just show me. Open my eyes. He's going to do it for you. Love you. Bye.